Hello and welcome to Copyright, Copyleft, and Everything in Between, a presentation about copyright, fair use, public domain, and Creative Commons. My name is James Gubbins, and I'm a District Technology Coordinator with Maine Township High School, District 207 in Park Ridge, Illinois. We're a three-high school district just outside the city of Chicago. We also have a special education satellite school for which I provide most of the support and professional development for all things technology related. I also serve our administration center and most recently our special education services department throughout the district in that capacity as well. You can reach me via email with any questions you may have about today's session through jgubbins@maine207.org. You can follow me on Twitter and friend me on Facebook if you so choose as JM Gubbins. I do encourage you to read my blog at zenedotus.net, where I'm always writing about things having to do with education and technology, so you might find that to be a valuable resource. And just about everywhere else on the web is jgubbins207. If you do a Google search to that ID, you're sure to find me out there in cyberspace looking for new and exciting applications in the cloud that I can then share with educators like yourselves, who hopefully will bring them back to the classrooms and use them to excite and engage your students. Or in the case of copyright law, make sure that you keep yourself out of jail. I'm pleased to be presenting today with Andy Brault, and I'll let Andy introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Andy Brault. I teach math and chemistry at Horicon High School in Horicon, Wisconsin. You can email me at andybrault@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter and Facebook with my name, Andy Brault. All right.
Fantastic. Before we go ahead and dive into copyright, though, I do have a quick question. Andy, are you a lawyer?
No, but I played one on TV.
Oh, I bet that paid a lot better than being an educator. At any rate, all kidding aside, neither one of us are lawyers, and if we misspeak, please feel free to leave a comment for us underneath the YouTube video. We're always willing to learn new things, so if we're incorrect about something, we'd like to hear it. And don't sick the copyright police on us. We're just trying to help you. All right, so Andy, why don't you dive into copyright and talk a little bit about that?
All right. Copyright is law. That is, copyright is a law that is designed to protect the producers of original work. It protects those producers from other people stealing the material and stealing credit away from them, as well as of the financial benefits. So copyright material can be used by other people. However, because of the protection, we have to get permission first. So we can check with the owner of that work, get their permission. We can give them credit as we use their work. Sometimes we might be asked to purchase their work before we can use it, and we want to make sure that we use it responsibly. If we follow these guidelines, we can use other people's original work without getting in trouble.
Well, Andy, if copyright means we have to ask permission to use a work, how do we use resources without violating the law?
Well, excellent question. We use other people's work all the time without permission, and we do so without getting in trouble with copyright law because there are exceptions to this law. That is, there are ways that we can use other people's work without permission. For example, in an educational or library use, we can use work without permission. There's this doctrine called fair use. We'll talk about that a little later. There's a special licensing called Creative Commons that we'll address. And some pieces of work fall under what's called public domain. And we'll talk about what that is in this presentation as well.
Oh, fantastic. Incidentally, there is a resource there. It says Copy and Fair Use Animation from Common Sense Education, and that's a little video clip up above. If you either click the link or the video clip, it should play there right within the presentation. You can follow along with this presentation by using the link in the description of this video, so feel free to pull that up. Obviously, we're not going to play videos within a Google Hangout. It would be a little distracting, so we'll let our audience go ahead and watch those videos on their own. We'll trust that they'll take the time to do so. Excellent. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about fair use.
All right, so fair use is a doctrine that the courts can use to determine if we fairly use someone else's original work without permission. So the courts will look at several factors to determine if we fairly use someone else's original work. even without their permission. For example, if we use someone else's work for a non-commercial use, an educational use, or a use that transforms our society, the courts will consider that an exception to copyright law. The courts will be willing to overlook the copyright law if the piece of original work is actually very informational. Nonfiction work is made up of facts and such, and the courts will allow you to use that without permission. The more original the piece of work, the less likely it is to be used under fair use. For example, pieces of fiction would be protected under copyright law, even under the fair use doctrine. The courts will also look at quantity and quality. How much of the original work do you use, if you're using part of it versus the whole thing, and what is the quality of the part that you take? If you take part of a film, for example, that gets at the heart of the story, that would be high quality work compared to a very minor part of that film. So how important is that part compared to the overall piece of original work? The last factor that courts will consider is the financial impact that copying that work would have. If you impact the original producer's bottom line, the courts would be more willing to find you in violation of copyright law. So those are exceptions that the courts can use and look at in determining if you're using fair use over copyrighted material.
Well, and also the fair use is a slippery slope. How do we know we are adhering to the fair use doctrine?
Excellent question. The only real way to actually know if your use falls under fair use is to be taken to court. Only when a judge actually looks at your defense could it be ruled as fair use or not.
So then is fair use the best way to use copyrighted material?
It's really not, because of the unpredictable nature of it. You don't know if you're using fair use until you actually go to court. So there are other more reliable, more concrete ways that we can use someone else's original work without having that uncertainty as we're using it.
Well, maybe we should move on and explore public domain. Maybe that's an easier way to use works without worrying about breaking copyright law. But before we do, I want to mention that there is a resource here, Copyright Exceptions in Fair Use, a crash course in intellectual property number 3 by Stan Mueller. Again, you can either click that link and watch it on YouTube, or just click the little video link within the presentation if you're following along. Let's go ahead and move on to talk about public domain, which refers to creative works that are not or no longer protected by intellectual property laws, such as copyright, trademarks, and patents. Works that are not subject to copyright assigned to the public domain by their creators or whose copyright have expired are free to use without permission. Additionally, works that were created in an official capacity by a federal government employee or officer is considered public domain. So if you were to go to a website that was created by the government and find a nice picture of one of our national parks, you would be able to use that image without giving attribution. However, there are some qualifications on that. If it was work that was created by an outside entity that had been contracted by the government, well, that outside entity owns that work. So you've got to be really careful, even with public domain. Just because it says it's out there and free to use doesn't necessarily mean that it is. And it got even more tricky with the Copyright Term Extension Act of 1998, which lengthened copyrights that were created on or after January 1st, 1978 to the length of the author plus 70 years. So once an author dies, if the work had been copyrighted on or after 1978, after the author dies, you have to wait 70 more years before that work enters the public domain. Some good resources for this include Copyright and Fair Use Standards excuse me, Copyright and Fair Use Stanford University Libraries, teachingcopyright.com, and an excellent article called How Mickey Mouse Keeps Changing Copyright Law. It seems that Disney is very good at making sure that copyright law gets written every time Mickey Mouse is about to enter the public domain. So I encourage you to read some of those articles on your own and get a little bit more familiar with what public domain is all about. As I said, there are a number of different directives with the public domain law, and there's a nice tool out there. It's a little slider, and if you click on it within the presentation, it will open up a little website at librarycopyright.net/resources digital slider, and this will kind of give you an idea of how tricky public domain really even is. So if we were to take George Orwell's work, Animal Farm, which was published in 1945, and move our slider down, I'm sure that in 1945 it was published with a copyright notice. It may or may not have been renewed after 28 years, which was the law at that time, that you had to renew your copyright every 28 years. So let's just say that it was published with copyright notice and renewed after 28 years. Do you need permission? Well, maybe, according to this nice little slider. If we click on the asterisk, it will give us some more information, and it says, the work is protected by copyright. However, several copyright extensions may still allow you to use the work without the author's permission, such as fair use, being an educator, library or archival exceptions. So as you can see, there are a number of laws and doctrines that do make even using something that's in the public domain a little bit tricky. So the copyright status and term here, if we click on that, it actually said before I clicked on it that it's protected through 2018 or even longer. It all depends on when George Orwell actually died, and whether that was 95 years from the date of publication and whether it's been that 70+ years. So it gets really tricky and confusing, even with stuff that's in the public domain. So if you have a coworker or a student who comes to you and says, this stuff that I put in my presentation is from the public domain, you still have to look at it with a scrutinizing eye and see if it truly is or not.
So James, even with this slider, we can get these maybe options and all this uncertainty that comes with, is it actually in public domain or not? Is there any type of licensing that clearly defines what you are allowed to do with their work?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you asked, because that brings us to Creative Commons. Creative Commons was developed in 2001 by an intellectual consortium intent on allowing content creators the freedom to choose how to share their work. A number of the greatest intellectual minds of the digital world, including Larry Lessig and Aaron Swartz and a number of other people, got together and decided that we needed something that was a little bit different as far as licensing work. An author of a work should have a little bit more freedom over how they want to share what they have created. Because with copyright, as soon as you have an idea and you put that idea into practice, that work instantly becomes copyrighted. You don't have to file a patent, you don't have to go to an office, you don't have to pay a fee. That information, once it's published and that work has become generated from an idea into purpose, becomes copyrighted. And the nice thing about Creative Commons is that it allows the creator to actually go ahead and decide how they want that work to be shared. So this provides educators with clear-cut protocols regarding available resources for teaching, and students with guidelines on how to legally use content when creating. Additionally, any use of Creative Commons licensed work requires attribution be given to the owner. It doesn't matter which license you use, you have to provide attribution back to the person who created it. It's kind of like citing your sources when you're doing a research paper. Creative Commons licenses are global. With the public domain, there's a big question with when you go through some of the items in public domain, trying to decide if it's in public domain or not. And that question is, was it originally published within the United States or outside of the United States? Well, you don't have to worry about that with Creative Commons because it's a global license. And these licenses can be applied to just about any digital work: images, audio, video, text, any kind of media. You can apply these licenses to. Some good resources are actually Creative Commons themselves, and the Creative Commons license explained in plain English, and you can take a look at those.
Now, James, I really like the idea of using Creative Commons. It seems like it's a really straightforward way to tell if you're allowed to use something or not. But what I'm really curious about is what should I look for to know if something is covered under a Creative Commons license?
I'm so glad you asked that question, Andy. You'll probably see icons like these all over the internet as you're doing research and looking for resources. And these are Creative Commons licensed logos. And so this tells you that those works are licensed under different types of Creative Commons licenses. And there are 6 main licenses within Creative Commons. Attribution, CC BY. This basically means that you can use this work provided that you give that attribution back to the author. This is probably the least restrictive of them because it allows you to distribute, remix, tweak, and build upon that work, even commercially, as long as you give credit back to the original creator. The next one that you see there is attribution share alike CC by SA. This again allows you to remix, tweak, and build upon that work, even for commercial purposes, provided that you give that credit to the individual, but you have to release it under that same attribution share alike license. The next one down is attribution no derivatives CC by ND, which allows for the redistribution, commercial and non-commercial use of the work, provided that it's passed along unchanged and in its entirety with credit back to the original creator. So in other words, you can't make changes to that work, but you can go ahead and share it commercially or non-commercially. You can make profit off of somebody else's work, believe it or not, under this license. The next one that you see down there is attribution non-commercial CC by NC. And this license lets others remix, tweak, and build upon the work non-commercially, and you have to give that attribution back to the original individual. They don't have to license their derivative works under the same terms. So in other words, this is a little bit different from that attribution share alike license where you have to release it under a share alike. This is just saying you can't make a profit off of it. So it's kind of a mix of the attribution share alike and a regular attribution. It's just saying you can't use it commercially. The next one down says attribution non-commercial share alike CC by NC-SA. This license allows you to remix, tweak, and build upon your work non-commercially, as long as you provide that credit back and release it under a share alike license. So you start to see that these kind of mix and match together a little bit as you go through them. The last one that we see there is attribution non-commercial no derivative CC by NC-ND, and this is the most restrictive of the 6 main licenses. It allows others to use your work and share it, provided that you give credit to the original creator. So in other words, you have to provide that attribution. You cannot change it. You can't make any derivative works of it. You cannot make profit off of it. It's almost like a copyright work. And a lot of the work that I'll release, if I'm doing a presentation, will be released under that, because I don't want somebody taking something that I've created and spent many, many hours developing and that I'm going to use again and again at conferences across the country. I don't want somebody taking that and saying, well, I'm using this work now without my permission. So they have to get that attribution with attribution non-commercial no derivatives, and they can't make any changes to it or make a profit off of it. The last thing that you see down there is public domain, and Creative Commons has released a public domain license just so that you have a way to say this came from the public domain and I've checked it and I've made sure that it's available in that way. So let's take a look at how this really works. Let's say that I am doing a research project on the Parthenon or the Acropolis, and I want to have a picture from atop the mountain there in Greece. And if you've ever been to the Parthenon, you know that it's a very touristy place, so you're going to find pictures out there that have tourists in them. There's also a lot of scaffolding. Well, this particular picture was found on Flickr, and it was released under a Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 2.0 generic license. So that means that I can actually remix this work a little bit, and I can transform it. So I've gone ahead and I've removed the scaffolding from the Acropolis and the people who are there visiting. I can take that a step further and I can use some filters and make a creative transformative work with it, provided that I release it under that same Creative Commons Attribution Share Alike 2.0 generic license. There's a great video that does a better job than I ever could of explaining how these licenses work, and I encourage you to view it. It is released under a Creative Commons license, so it's by Chris Follows, and you can go ahead and view that at any time by following the link within the presentation. Actually, I misspoke. It is under a copyright license, and that's why it does not have that cute little icon down there, and that's why I have given it attribution the way that I have. I've used MLA formatting to go ahead and give it the proper citation so that you can view it. It is on YouTube. It's available to view publicly, but it is a copyrighted YouTube video. And we'll talk a little bit more about videos and how we can find Creative Commons license work in just a little bit. In fact, now. When we look at some worry-free resources. What Andy and I have done is we've gone ahead and created a Padlet, which you can get to through bit.ly/worry-free resources, and that link is case sensitive, so worry is capitalized, free is capitalized, and resources is capitalized. But again, if you're following along in the presentation, you should be able to just go ahead and click on that link and access the Padlet that we have developed for you. We'd like to share with you now a number of different sites that have Creative Commons licensed work or public domain work that you can use for your classroom, for your presentations, for your movies that your students make, whatever it may be. We want to encourage the creation of content using media in the classroom for sure, but we also want to make sure that we're doing so responsibly and making sure that we're not violating any copyright laws. So Andy and I are going to go through 8 different sites. We'll kind of play off each other here and share ways that you can find audio, video, images, and even fonts that you can use to kind of expand your horizons with media. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with a site called the Free Music Archive. This is an interactive library of high-quality legal audio downloads. So if we go to freemusicarchive.org, we can do a search. And I'm just going to go ahead and do a search here for the word epic. If you've ever watched a preview or a trailer of a movie, they use some pretty epic music in it. So I'm going to go ahead and do a search for epic, and I'm going to search music. And you're going to see that I come up with a number of different tracks here, 43 in fact. Well, if I scroll down just a little bit, you see on the left-hand side there, it says license. And I can search for work that is only under a Creative Commons license, and I can choose all those 6 licenses. I can actually also add public domain to that. So now when I filter my search a little bit more, I may still end up with 43 tracks. Oh, one of them must have been copyrighted because I ended up with 42. But I can go ahead and choose one of these, such as Into the Storm. And when I do that, it's going to open a page, and this composer, Brandon Liu, has gone ahead and uploaded this work. It's an orchestral piece, and I'm not sure if it'll actually play or not through the Google Hangout. We can give it a try. I don't know if it'll work. Let's see. I'm not hearing much of anything. So you can go to the Free Music Archive and check this one out for yourself. But you see that little logo down there in the bottom right-hand corner? It is a Creative Commons attribution license. So that means that I can go ahead and download this. I can add it to a presentation or into a video or a trailer. Trailers are very popular with teachers to have their students create a very quick piece of work and share it. And they can use this Into the Storm piece of music by Brendan Liu, provided they give attribution to that individual. And you would do this by putting attribution in your credit at the end of a video, or if it's in your presentation, just go ahead and copy out that logo and link to the original work so that you do give that proper citation. Andy, do you want to talk about the next one in there, which I believe is Freesound?
Yes, please. So I wanted to share Freesound. This is a site that I've used before while putting on a play. We were having some trouble finding the right sound cue with a very large CD collection that we have. So we went to this site and were able to find a number of sound clips that we could use in our show. For example, we had trouble finding a doorbell cue that we really like. So if you could search doorbell, yeah.
Maybe helpful to spell it correctly.
And then there's a number of a number of sound cues that we can pick from. If you look over to the top right, there's our different licenses that we can choose from. So if we want to narrow down by license, we can click on that, any one of those. For example, a Creative Commons. So that narrows the search down for us.
Excellent. And I see here that this is actually a Creative Commons 0 license, so this sound is actually in the public domain.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Excellent. So we would just download that and we'd be able to add it into a presentation or use it in a play or a musical and not have to worry about even providing attribution because it is in the public domain. Excellent. All right, let's talk about images a little bit. One of my favorite places to find images is Pixabay. All images on Pixabay are released free of copyrights under Creative Commons public domain licensing, so again, no attribution is required. And I can go here, and we all like landscape pictures to make those famous memes. So if we go ahead and just type in landscape here, we're going to see a number of images appear. Now I want to issue a word of caution. You'll notice that these at the top have a little watermark above them, and it says Shutterstock. Now the reason that that's there is because if you were to click on it, it would say, well, you can purchase this and use it if you so choose from Shutterstock. Shutterstock is a sponsor of Pixabay, so they advertise on Pixabay, and that's how Pixabay is able to stay in business. But as you can see below, there are actually 39,233 free images. So if I wanted this lovely picture of a forest, I can go ahead and click on that, and you see that it's licensed under a CCO public domain license. So I can go ahead and download that, and then I can use that in a presentation. That's a lovely picture of a forest when both Andy and I are in the tundra. We're in the dead of winter here in the Midwest, so that puts a smile on both our faces, I'm sure. All right, Andy, you wanted to share, I believe, the Library of Congress picture repository?
Yeah, I find the Library of Congress to be a great source for free prints and photographs. So if you click on that link. All right, and we see our search option, so we can click on search and look for a photo. Let's say I'm trying to share with my students about lab safety. Let's search to see what images I might be able to find with lab safety.
It might help to spell safety correctly. It's late at night. It may say 9 o'clock on the clock, but it's the evening.
All right, so then we could look through those. I'd like to make a note here. If you could find that box right there for larger image available anywhere, we want to click on that. These are images that we're going to be able to actually access versus other images that we would actually have to travel a couple states over to find at the Library of Congress. So to avoid actually going to the actual Library of Congress, we're going to click on that. And these are images that we can use. Anything to add, James, to that?
No, I think we should take a look at one of them, though. Let's look at conducting diet and nutrition experience on rats in the animal lab of the Home Economics Department of Iowa State College in Ames, Iowa. Wow, that was a mouthful. That's a quite long title. As you can see here, there is a place for viewing larger images, right? So we can do that, and we can actually see that picture in its full size.
All right, and if we go back, there's a rights advisory. So this picture has, for rights advisory, no known restrictions. So we can use that. But if you could scroll down a little bit, at the very bottom, we see right there, rights assessment is your responsibility. Is the Library of Congress's great way of saying it shouldn't be a problem. There's no restrictions that we know of, but we're not responsible for it. You are if you use it. So just something to watch out for, but they do have the rights advisory with these photographs so you can get an idea of your restrictions as you use them.
And my guess would be that this one is actually in the public domain because it says under its rights advisory here, no known restrictions. But for more information, see the U.S. Farm Security Administration Office of War Information. And I believe that means that this is a government entity who actually created that image, and therefore it falls under public domain.
Interesting.
That's just a guess. Again, I could be wrong, and if there's a lawyer out there watching this video, they will tell me as much if I am. All right, so let's go ahead and move on and talk a little bit about fonts. One of my favorite places to find fonts is 1001fonts.com. And these are free commercial use fonts that are released under a little bit different kind of a license. Fonts have their own peculiar set of licensing, but most of what you'll find here is under an SIL open font license, and you can read more about that if you so choose just by Googling it. But if we go to 1001fonts.com, I actually used this application to create the little tombstone icon that you saw earlier in this presentation. And all I did was I typed in the keyword of tombstone when I was looking for different font categories. And once I did that, I was able to go ahead and type in my text. So I believe I had put in death of author before. And it goes ahead and actually automatically gives me a preview of what that piece of text is going to look like in that particular font. Now, they do want you to go ahead and download the font and add it into your font library, whether you're using an Office product or whether you're using Google Drive or what have you, whatever application that you're using. It could even be Photoshop that you need some fonts in. So you would go ahead and click on download. But before we do that, I wanted to point out that this font is free for commercial use. You'll see those little icons there that say as much. They give you a nice little way to look at the Nova Cut font. In this particular case, they put it on a nice background there and give you some ideas of how to use it, which is nice. But if I click on free for commercial use before downloading it, you'll see that under more here, it says it's free for personal use, free for commercial use, modification allowed, and even redistribution allowed because it's licensed under that SIL Open Font License, or OFL for short. So that's the 1000fonts.com. Andy, you wanted to talk about Google Fonts?
Yeah, if you could open that up for me.
Sure. And just so everyone knows, Andy is not mistyping some of this. It's me and my fumbling fingers at this hour. I'm driving the presentation and opening up the different websites. It's the only way we could get it to work within the Hangout. So don't blame Andy for any mistakes there.
Thanks, I appreciate that. Anyways, I wanted to share Google Fonts because I use Google Docs and Google Slides so often in my classroom that it's just a really quick, easy, convenient way to find different fonts. So as you go through this, you can click, if you see the blue button, add to collection, and then add to your collection, and you can use it in your Google Docs or Google Drive, any of the Google Drive apps. Anything to add to that, James?
Well, we don't have to worry about any kind of copyright or fair use or public domain or Creative Commons because it's a Google product that goes into a Google product, right?
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. All right, let's talk a little bit about video. If you do any kind of video production, and I'm a big proponent of allowing your students to create video, we have ways to create media in their hands every single day. A lot of your students are walking around with iPads or iTouches or cell phones. Guess what? They have a media studio in their hands to record audio, to shoot video, or what have you. But sometimes they need a video clip to add into their creative work. And you don't want them going out and downloading something randomly from YouTube. There are some Creative Commons licensed works on YouTube. You just have to use that advanced filter. But there are other great sites out there like VidEvo, which has free HD stock footage and motion graphics. So if we go to videvo.net, hopefully this will load for us, and let's say we want video of some people running. I can go ahead and type in running and do a search. And again, the initial search may turn up some sponsor links. And you see here, they have little stars on them. These are probably going to take me back to Shutterstock. Shutterstock is a repository of works that you can buy a license for if you so choose, but I like free. So I'm going to scroll down here just a little bit, and you'll see that I have a number of different clips of people running. Maybe I want to do a presentation about a marathon. This looks like some kind of a race, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that video, and it is going to show me that the file properties of it, how long it is, what the aspect ratio is, etc. And I would have to go ahead and sign up for an account with VidEvo, which is free, before I can do any downloading. But once I have, I can go ahead and accept their terms and conditions and click on Download Clip. Now, I scroll down a little bit further, and I see underneath the tags is the license. And they actually have a VidEvo license for a lot of their work. And if I click on it, it's a lot like a Creative Commons license. It says I'm free to use the clip in any project, commercial or non-commercial, forever. I can use the clip without attributing the author. I can adapt, remix, and transform and build upon the material. My one restriction is I can't redistribute it. I can't give it away or sell the material in its original form. So that's part of their terms of and conditions. But you'll also find Creative Commons licensed work here. So if I were to type in skateboarding, which a lot of students like to do, I can go ahead and do that, and hopefully I'll find the video that I saw earlier today. I may or may not find the video that I was looking at earlier today in preparation for this, but let's take a look. I did see one that was Creative Commons licensed, and this may be it. Nope, this is that standard VidEvo license. You'll just have to trust me on this. I'm not going to go searching for that one particular file right now, because I want Andy to go ahead and tell us a little bit more about Internet Archive. But you see how that works.
All right, thanks. So I wanted to share Internet Archive, in part because of the videos that go with it, but also because of a number of other resources that you can get under a single search. For example, we're studying chemical kinetics right now. So if we could search kinetics with a K. Yeah, there it is.
I can spell kinetics, but I can't spell simple words tonight. I don't know what's going on there.
As I'm searching for stuff to use in a presentation to students, I can start with this search and then look at what's available. If you notice the book symbols, yeah, right there. And as we scroll down, that symbol will change. So we can find, or will it? Yeah, right there. So we can find text related to kinetics. We can also find videos related to kinetics. And if you scroll back up, we can actually filter by text, movie, and even software to find a variety of media to use in learning about chemical kinetics. And if we could click on one of the videos, that first one looks terrific. And let's look for our Creative Commons license that goes with this. I see it right there. And James, if you could review what those symbols mean from your presentation earlier.
Sure. This is an attribution non-commercial share-alike 2.0 license, and that basically means that I need to provide attribution, which you have to do with all Creative Commons licenses. I cannot use it commercially, so I cannot make a profit off of it, and I have to share it the same way that it was originally shared through Creative Commons. So if I change the work in any way, shape, or form, I would have to share that out under the same attribution non-commercial share-alike 2.0 England and Wales license. So I'm not 100% sure what that one's all about, but I'm sure if we clicked on it, we get actually a description of it, which we do. So apparently England and Wales has their own set of Creative Commons work. And anytime that you see that little logo, you can click on it and it will go into great detail about what that license actually means.
Well, thank you for sharing that little bit because I had trouble memorizing all of those symbols from before. I really like the ability to be able to just click to read more versus having to memorize all the symbols and what they mean. So I'm sure that's most helpful for everyone in general. All right, that's our last tool to share, isn't it, James?
I believe it is. Wow, this has been an interesting conversation. We've gone through a lot in a few moments' time, talking about copyright, copyleft, and everything in between, from copyright to fair use to public domain to Creative Commons. There's a lot involved with each of those types of licenses. And we encourage you to go out and explore and learn a little bit more about each of them on your own. I think you'll be quite surprised by what you find. Any last suggestions, Andy?
Yeah, if you need any help, ask James.
Thank you so much. I'll be happy to help in any way that I can. My final tip is if you are going to use Creative Commons licensing, go ahead and download those different images. You can get them from Creative Commons. There's a whole repository of them out there for the 6 different licenses. Download that image, and you'll notice in any presentation that I do, I'll actually include when I use a Creative Commons licensed work, the correct license. And what I'll do is I'll hyperlink that picture back to the license and the original work itself. So that way I'm providing that attribution. Always, 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 if you're using Creative Commons, make sure you give that attribution because that's the way the licensing works. All right, hopefully you've learned a lot about copyright, public domain, fair use, and Creative Commons. Thanks for hanging with us. Take care.
Thanks.